Welcome to the All Things Real Estate Podcast with our very own Josh Barker. With more than 20 years of experience and over 5,000 properties sold, Josh brings a unique perspective to the real estate market. Let's get started.
Well, good morning, Josh.
Well, good morning, Joey.
It's December.
Yes, it is.
Make it a December to remember, Josh. Not a September to remember. But it's a cold December. You and I were talking before the cameras started rolling. We're just talking about there's a few things, the same questions get brought up over and over. And I feel like you and I talk about the same things a lot. It feels a little redundant to us, but we live in this space. You know what I mean? And for the last 2+ years, one of the big ones is just interest rates.
Yep.
Like that is like the thing that everybody's holding their breath on. Everybody's waiting for these rate cuts, and we hear the feds are doing this and the feds are doing that.
Yeah.
But like, it's not a one-to-one equation. It's not like, the feds cut interest rates a quarter point, you're going to get, it's totally, can you kind of go into like where interest rates are now and what you see kind of happening and what effect that's having on the market?
Sure. Well, I mean, big picture to respond to what you're saying. I mean, most of the time when you and I are talking, we do talk about the same thing because this is an all things real estate podcast.
Yeah, no, totally.
So I think there's a lot of other podcasts and going on in the real estate space where they're, drifting in all these different topics, which I think is great. But you won't get that with us because if you go to us, you just know you're going to get real estate. I do that on purpose. For sure. But when it comes to the rates, right now the Federal Reserve, obviously, the time we're doing this podcast actually right before the Federal Reserve is going to make their announcement.
Okay.
So that whatever it is, it'll be after this podcast coming out. But I will say this, I think they're going to cut the rate a 0.25%. Very confident in that. So what happens every time the Federal Reserve gets ready to meet is that the regional Federal Reserve banks, they'll go into a period where they'll start taking interviews and they start talking about what they think that the data means in the marketplace. Like right now, for example, we know there's not a lot of data because there hasn't been a lot of reporting for reasons we can't really talk about on the podcast.
Sure.
But normally the Federal Reserve gets a lot of reporting information about jobs, employment, unemployment, inflation, core inflation. And then with that, it tries to do its best to figure out where's the economy going. Mm-hmm. And then the Federal Reserve chairs in the different regions will come out and start talking about it. And as they start to talk about it, that is when you start to see interest rates moving. It's not when the Federal Reserve actually moves the rate. So what you're going to see now, and I suspect based on what I'm seeing, I'm starting to see the rates trending down a little bit. And a lot of that is because the talk coming out of the Federal Reserve, out of the regional banks, is starting to say that they're looking at a 0.25 point cut. And so now at this point, when they actually have the meeting and go dark and then come out of the meeting and say, okay, we're going to cut the rates a 0.25%, the mortgage rate probably won't move very much. Mm-hmm. And it's because it's already, the people that are chasing the bond market already know that it was going to happen. And so they've adjusted for it already.
Yeah. So where are interest rates? Still really low sixes?
Yeah, we're sitting around 6.25.
Okay.
We probably aren't going to get to 6 by the end of this year. But I think that, Q1, Q2 next year, depending on what inflation's doing, we could start to see those rates hitting that 6% mark.
And if we get in the 5s, that's kind of like a magic number because when that interest rate drops down, because there's the monthly payment, but there is also a psychological component of this.
Yeah.
That's probably, anytime the interest rates drop, that's when all of a sudden the buying starts to ramp up.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. You're going to start to see going into next year as interest rates start to come down. If rates get into the high fives, psychologically alone, it's already going to have an impact on the market because people are going to start to hear the rates are in their 5% range. That's going to cause more buyer participation just from a psychological perspective, but also from a real practical perspective too. More people will be able to afford more of a home from rates going down. Don't forget that for every 1% the rate drops, it increases purchasing power by up to 10%.
Yeah.
So if rates drop from 6.25 down to 5.75, that's a 0.5% drop, 5% increase in purchasing power that shows up on the street.
Mm-hmm. Especially at the lower end of the market. Mm-hmm. Especially in the 3s range, the $300,000 range. I mean, luxury homes, it's a different buyer.
Yeah.
They're probably not as cost conscious.
Yep.
say that 3 times fast, as the lower, but the people that are looking at buying $330,000, $360,000, giving them 5% more purchasing power, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It really changes things for them.
It does. And don't forget, I mean, literally half of all the buyers in the market today are under 350,000.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the reality. So, and anytime the interest rates go down, it has a huge impact. What I describe the market as is being very rate sensitive. So many of our borrowers who purchase homes are using financing in order to purchase. And because of that, interest rates have a massive impact on their decision making.
Yeah. There's been usually classically 2 big forces at work that we talk about a lot. One is interest rates. The other is inventory. It's a typical supply demand thing. Reading for a very long time has had very low supply.
Yep.
We don't have, and the thing about supply is that there's only really 2 ways to replenish it. One is new construction, which we are very limited on our new construction. We really only have 2 major builders. There's a lot of smaller builders building homes, but they're only building a few homes, so it's almost like no impact to the market. So you have that, which is keeping the market pushed up as far as pricing. Because if we were like Austin, Texas, where there's 300 new permits a month, it would be a completely different story.
Yeah.
But we don't. We have that. The other big one is obviously interest rates, the purchasing power. And then there was a third one that popped up a few years ago it kind of came out of left field, at least for me, which was insurance. Insurance went from this like, so by the way, your insurance is going to be this to be, no, your insurance is this if you can get it.
Yeah.
And so those are all 3 factors that are like battling to where the market kind of goes.
Right.
So can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, there's a lot there. I mean, I'll try to unpack it. So first thing, it reminds me of somebody asked me the other day, they said, are mortgage interest rates a local phenomenon or is it the same everywhere? And I would say no, mortgage interest rates is pretty much the same everywhere. Whatever the rate is I can get today in California is likely the rate that I'm going to get on the East Coast, right? Not the same for fuel prices, but for interest rates, yes. What's different though is that the cost for insurance varies by region. Like right now in California, I don't need to tell most people listening to this that insurance is a big issue. It's very costly. And then the other one is what is your tax basis? So, are your taxes based on 1.1% purchase price, which is what it is here in Shasta County, or is it much higher than that in other states? That's sometimes how they make their money is by charging more on property taxes. And so the payment, if you will, is affected by region. But the interest rate itself is more local. When it comes to new construction, right now through October, we were at 158 new permits pulled in the city of Redding
for the year.
For the year,
which is
it was
tiny
up.
Number.
It was up 50 from a year before.
But still, these numbers are so small.
Very small. Only about but it was a 50% increase year over year. That's the part. And really, if you want to know, where'd that come from? Palomar. Palomar Builders pulled a ton of permits and they're selling a lot of homes. And full disclosure, obviously we represent Palomar, but they are participating at a high level now, which they weren't before. And that's what's showing up on those housing numbers now that we're seeing. And going into next year, that's going to be a good thing. But like when you mentioned Austin, Texas being 300 permits a month, well, that's the same thing as Roseville. Roseville was at 300 permits a month. We're averaging about 15 permits a month. So not enough new housing coming online, right? And that has an impact. The absorption rate right now, we're sitting at around a 4.5 month supply.
Well, that dropped because I think we were in the 5+ month.
That's right. And it did drop.
And that's the lower end of what you consider a neutral market.
That's right.
I mean, buyers and sellers have negotiating power.
Yep.
There's not so little inventory that sellers, and there's not so much inventory that buyers have the leverage. It's kind of like.
Yep. Absorption rate in a market is like psychology to real estate, right? So in Shasta County right now with a 4.5 month supply of homes for sale, the psychology is that it's a neutral market. When it's a seller's market because the psychology is, oh my gosh, the market's going crazy. My house is going up every month. Buyers feel this frenzy and urgency to jump into the housing market. If they don't, they feel like they're going to get priced out. That's a 0 to 3 month supply of homes for sale that causes that psychology, right? When the inventory is at 4 to 5 months supply, the pressure comes off. Now, all of a sudden, homes aren't appreciating as fast. Now, all of a sudden, there isn't the same level of urgency in the market with the buyers anymore, and people are calming down a little bit. The conversations are different when you're out to dinner with your friends, right?
Yeah.
And then a buyer's market would be anything that's really a 6 month or more supply.
Which we haven't been in a long time.
Right. And the conversations start to get stressful on that end of the equation too. So sellers are panicked because home prices are going down. They feel like they're losing equity out of their home.
Days on market are going up.
Buyers are extremely reluctant, not sure if it's a good time or not because they feel like the pricing might be better next month than it is this month. And so that's when you're in that, 6 month supply or more. The psychology is market's not doing so good. Right.
This is classic Adam Smith supply versus demand.
We're right smack in the middle of
Business 101 class, economics 101.
Totally. Yeah. And we're pretty much right now the dart is in the bullseye. We're just right in the middle right now. And we're in the winter months too. So waiting till next year, we'll get to see as interest rates to come down. There'll probably be a tailwind in the economy as it starts to grow with a lot of the different things coming out of that bill. And as a result of that, I think you're going to start to see more buyer participation in the market. And if we're lucky, we'll see interest rates come down enough that we'll see multiple leg transactions. Like I said, where a seller will relinquish their home to the market and buy another home at the same time, creating two pieces of inventory instead of just stripping away at one.
Well, the other factor, when I said there was two, one is new construction. The other one is people, hey, I'm going to sell my home to either downsize or upsize. And that's been suppressed from normal numbers because so many people had these insanely good interest rates. And they're like, yeah, I'd like to get a bigger house, or I'd like to sell this big house. My kids are gone and I'd like to get to a smaller house, but I'm sitting on a 2.9, 3.3 interest rate. I'm just not going to participate.
Yeah.
And so until interest rates come down quite a bit, until they're in the fives, if you're sitting on a 3.2, it's going to take something big to make you want to move.
Well, and we talked about it last time. We don't have to kick the dead horse on this one, but I would say this is that as interest rates go down between now and 5.5%, 5.75%, I think as rates come down, pricing will not only firm, but maybe go up just a little bit.
Yeah.
Once we get down into that 5% range, assuming we get there, now you're going to start to see replenishing of inventory. Seller will relinquish their home they currently own, right? Bringing a piece of inventory to the market and be buying a home at the same time, which will actually help the market have stabilize in pricing.
Yeah. Another thing that we've been talking about a lot, a topic that's come up a lot, is Zillow. I don't think the average consumer understands exactly what Zillow is, their business model, and because they have a few, and their impact on the market.
Yeah.
Do you want to kind of talk about Zillow a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worthy of talking about because obviously there's some lawsuits that have been flying around. We're starting to hear customers ask us about that, and there's one particular one that stands out to me as one that deserves explanation. So I'll just summarize it this way to begin with. Zillow's been with us, that I can recall anyway, since about, at any meaningful level, since about 2004-ish, 2003-ish, right in there. It probably existed before that.
I didn't know you were going to go that far back.
Yeah. And at the time, it was just a website, and it wasn't very good. And people began to look at it, regionally up in the Northwest, like in Washington. It started picking up steam a little bit, and we heard about it, but it wasn't really distracting. It wasn't doing anything that was, selling leads and all this other stuff wasn't really a part of what they were doing at the time. So it would just, for a consumer, it just would have been like any other website in the market, right? You have a major Coldwell Banker website, a major Remax website. You have a major, Realtor.com website. And then all of a sudden there's this new one up there that's called Zillow, right? And so I think the point is that that's how it kind of slowly came into the market. What happened though was that over time they figured out how to monetize selling leads to real estate agents. And we purchased leads from them. Initially, when we started working with them purchasing leads, what we were doing is that we were paying for the privilege. And this is where it's interesting. We were paying for the privilege to have our own listings on Zillow. When a consumer had questions about that listing, because I paid for it, those inquiries from consumers came to us. So in other words, I'm the listing agent. I'm paying Zillow to make sure that when people call on those listings, it goes to my sales team because we thought we were the most qualified to answer any questions that the buyer might have about that listing.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Okay. And so Zillow allowed for us to do that. Now you had to pay. And so, for me, I had to carry a lot of listings. And so, I paid a lot of money to make sure we protected those listings in order to serve our clients at the highest level. Well, then what Zillow did was they cut that opportunity off. and said you can no longer pay in order to claim your own listings that way to make sure they get routed to you. And that's when there was this separation between what the buyer was trying to do, which was to try to get a hold of the listing agent, and what the listing company was trying to do, which was to work with that buyer. They separated those two, and they separated them by policy. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Couldn't buy those leads anymore. What they would do is that you would then have to just buy leads in general, meaning that you couldn't specifically say, I just want the leads that go in on our listings. You buy leads in general. So when a buyer goes on Zillow now and searches for anything on Zillow, if you provide your information to Zillow, Zillow will then sell that information to a real estate agent. And we try to buy as much as we possibly can because it increases the chances of us servicing our own listings.
Sure.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course.
And it's very expensive to do that because now I'm spending money on leads that I don't necessarily need to get to the ones that I'm trying to protect. Are you following me on that?
Tracking.
So with that in mind, let's cut this into a couple pieces. Any thoughts you have or anything that triggered when I brought that up?
Well, I've kind of tracked how Zillow's changed their business model and their approach. And you know me, you've been very positive about Zillow in comparison to me.
Yeah.
I felt like as soon as they were a publicly traded company, when you're a publicly traded company, there's a quarterly pressure to increase profits.
Sure.
You make $1 trillion and everyone goes, great job. How are you going to make 1.1 trillion? I mean, that's the second sentence out of their mouth. That's just how the stock market works.
Of course.
And so I started to see them do things that I thought were questionable.
Yeah.
I felt their communication with the consumer wasn't as transparent because real estate has this incredible pressure of being transparent. The National Association of Realtors, all these things, there's all these disclosures. You've got to sign so many contracts these days. You've got a disclaimer. And Zillow was kind of navigating that, and maybe it was, of course, it's in font size -35 at the footer of the page. You didn't read that, Right. I struggled with them. Yeah. And I didn't think they were as transparent to the consumer. And then they were also moving into becoming a brokerage, so to speak. Maybe not, this is where the lawyer would pick me apart and go, Your Honor, permission to treat the, treat the hostile witness, but it's like, but wait a second, you're not just selling leads, you're getting a percentage of commission now. They started projects like that. Well, they had a buyer program. I mean, so the lines got blurred and they didn't play by the rules. Yeah. So I struggled with that.
Yeah, no, and that's fair that you bring that up. And it has been. I mean, the reason why I've had a proactive relationship with Zillow personally is because the consumer's going there. Yeah. And if the consumer is going there to search for homes, then we need to be there for the consumer. And like I said, it's gotten extremely expensive for us to be there for the consumer, the way that they've set it up. Now, what you mentioned there, didn't expand on, and I'll bring it up a little bit more, is that part of this newer lawsuits that you're seeing have a lot more to do with this 40% referral that they're charging now. Yeah. So, which we don't participate in. So, 4 or 5 years ago when, we had the opportunity to have a program like this, and I said no to it. And the reason why I didn't want to is because I didn't feel that it was the right thing for our customers, for me to have these referral relationships with Zillow where we're paying them 40% out of every transaction. And then I'm not buying leads anymore. They're sending them to me. But I just didn't think it was the right thing because we are a company where Zillow is just one of many lead sources that we service in our market, right? So I just didn't think it made sense. Having said that, though, there's a lot of companies that are, in fact, receiving referrals from Zillow. So they're not buying leads, they're receiving referrals from Zillow, and Zillow's charging them a 40% referral fee for that. And that, to my knowledge, I don't believe this program exists today in Redding anymore. It did for a little while, and it stopped for a little while. I just don't think it was very successful here. And they might bring it back. You never know. But that's this lawsuit that people are hearing about. It has a relationship to that because they believe that the consumer should be disclosed that that Zillow is receiving a 40% referral.
That's what I mean by transparency. They're involved in the transaction and they're not telling anybody anything.
Right. And I don't disagree with it. The California Association of Realtors has already picked this up as something that they want to address. And so I think by the end of this month, it'll be an additional disclosure that'll be required. That'll provide that transparency that we're always shooting for. Again, not so much of an issue in our local market for those that are listening or watching, but Nationally, there is a lawsuit right now that's related to this issue. But it's going to make things interesting going forward, because that particular lawsuit would change Zillow's model. They were trying heavily to go that direction.
And that's just one issue. Another thing that's come up is that they just I'm trying to think about how to word this, but they're basically not playing fair in the space. So they're saying, hey, look, we'll take listings that aren't on the MLS. So they'll let people put their properties on there and do
that's a separate lawsuit.
Yeah, a separate lawsuit. And then at the same time, they'll say, "Hey, Josh, if you have a coming soon or something where you're like, hey, I have a seller, but he wants to stay off market just yet. Something's going on. They're like, then we're not going to let you. You know what I mean? They're not. They don't play by the same rules.
Very different lawsuit because they're facing multiple larger ones,
big ones.
This one I wouldn't say is as high on the list that you're referring to, but there's a very large real estate company, nationally speaking, that often would have listings that when they list them, they put them in a coming soon status, meaning they're not on the multiple listing service yet, but they're on their website as coming soon, right? Mm-hmm. Zillow has that same feature, by the way, where you could post a listing on Zillow coming soon and not have it on any other sites either. Well, Zillow came out with a policy that says if you put your listings on your website as coming soon and they're not anywhere else, you'll never be allowed to put them on Zillow. And that's where the lawsuit is going right now. So, and when I look at that particular one, it's lower on the totem pole in terms of where I think that there'll be some major changes in policy. It sounds to me like two companies that are fighting right now. It doesn't seem as impactful on the consumer, other than obviously not being able to see everything that's for sale, which is a big deal, but it's just not, it's not the same. The other one that's pretty high on the list right now is that there was another lawsuit with Zillow that's related to basically telling a company, hey, we'll pay you to not come into business against us. And it's related to the apartment side of things.
Oh, wow.
And that's almost antitrust right there, right?
Yeah.
So, and I'm not an attorney, I don't play one on TV, but that one seems to me like, if you got the federal government on your back based on a particular thing that you've already done, that makes it a pretty big issue. But if we go back full circle, why would any of this be important? The point I want to drive home for anybody watching or listening to this, the probability of a person going on Zillow, inquiring about a listing, and having the expectation that you'll be talking to the listing agent when you actually inquire is very unlikely. Zillow is designed to separate the listing agent from talking to the buyer. Their program is designed to try to prevent that.
Yeah.
And so if you go to a conference there, when they're talking, you go to these other things that they're doing, they're always trying to separate those two, which is so interesting to me because I think that most buyers, if they call on a particular listing, their expectation at the very least is that they're talking to the real estate brokerage that has it listed for the obvious reason that they would likely have the most pertinent information regarding that listing. Yeah. And that's the exact thing they're not getting.
Yeah.
That is a problem. And I'd love to see it get fixed. And I'm sure there's a way that Zillow could find a way with their amazing site, with all of their consumer loyalty they have online. I'm sure there's a way that they can regain the trust of the listing agent and the consumer and provide a great service to the market. I think there's a way forward, but they'll have to get through this right now, this reset, if you will, of what's going to happen as a result of these lawsuits.
Well, we'll see how the lawsuits pan out.
Yeah.
I mean,
but there's been a lot in the last few years, right? We've had a huge change in terms of how we negotiate compensation, right? And now we have this issue with Zillow. I mean, there's a lot to it.
There was supposed to be a law that I can't remember if it was supposed to kick in January of 2025 or January 2024, but it was it wasn't real estate specific. It was nationwide, and it came and it felt like it didn't get enforced, and I don't even hear it anymore. But it was about the idea of these lead generators generating leads and them having to disclose that up front and actually give the consumer. So if I had a website, it doesn't matter. Let's say insurance quotes.
Yeah.
And this goes back to like the whole lending tree model that really started this 20 plus years ago, is that I would say, okay, Josh, I'm collecting your information. You're trying to get an insurance quote.
Yeah.
I'm going to give your information to these 3 insurance brokers, right? To make this a little easier for you.
Yep.
And I'm supposed to be somewhat transparent.
Right.
So that you're about to get contacted by these 3 companies, and I'm not going to give it to 23 companies and tell you 3. There's a bunch of different rules in this, and I can't even remember what the name of the bill was.
TCP?
TCP, that's right.
Yeah.
So it was supposed to, and the big thing was, well, wait a second, how's that going to work with lead providers like Zillow?
Yeah.
And that just kind of came and went and nothing happened.
Well, they put it on pause when the administration turned over. So you had whatever department in the federal government that was proactively policing those types of activities. They actually put it on hold. I think there's a stay on it. I think they're still in the process of working through the fine details on it. Because you're right. I mean, there was insurance companies and mortgage companies, a lot of different companies were beginning to really panic about, well, how are we supposed to service customers if we can't communicate with them?
Now, because you give disclosures, I'm going to give a disclosure.
Yeah.
I have a digital marketing agency and we specialize in lead generation. So it was a boom for me.
Right.
Because now the instead of a plumbing.com, it was like each plumber needed to build their website and their own lead funnel so that they could generate leads. So it was a boom for me. So I was excited. So you can imagine my dismay. It was like, and we're done.
Well, I mean, we're getting into the weeds of marketing at that point. But I'll tell you what, if you had 50 different companies all with websites generating leads on their own, and you can only have one front page to Google, it's going to be a tough way to enter the market. So I think there is some value to having larger lead generators.
Yeah. I just think there needs to be a level of transparency. The disclaimers don't need to be, font size this big in the footer. I think if Josh Barker gives his information to a company and they say, look, Josh, we're going to pass this on. Here's the 3 highest rated insurance brokers in your area, or that serve, we asked you some questions and these 3 offer that, then that should be it. It shouldn't be, well, there's really 23. There's 23, Josh.
Well, and you're probably paying to be in the top 3 or something too. So I think like for example, like if on Zillow, if they were to do this, if they were to say on a listing, you see the listing pop up, you like the listing, you like the information, you think it looks good. And then let's say Zillow gave you 3 options. One option, contact listing agent directly. Second option, contact the first agent that's available. Third option, send an email to the listing agent, right? You know what I mean? So something like that, where they can just have a few different options. Because right now they're clicking a button, say request tour, and it's literally getting routed to the person that's paying for the lead, and it's probably not the listing agent.
Yeah.
Which is, again, why we pay so much money every month for Zillow, is so that I can increase the probability of us servicing our own listings. Mm-hmm. The consumer's on Zillow, and bottom line, they're on Zillow. They feel like that's the most convenient site for them. I can't argue for them to not do that, but since they're going to be there, we need to figure out a way to service them.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
Well, Josh, I hope you have a wonderful December. I hope you have a great Christmas.
Yeah, thanks.
And we'll listen to find out if interest rates are going to come down. We think they probably will.
Yep.
And we'll also see, if is inventory going to climb up. But 4.7, it was in the 5s. It's going down. Obviously, it's the holidays. People are like, hey, look, I want to take my listing off the market. I don't really want to show my house during Christmas. I mean, this is every year, regardless of interest rates.
Yeah.
Usually things slow down a little bit through the holidays and then they ramp back up as soon as I like to say the sucker grass is high, as soon as that spring. And
single family homes at the peak of the market's about 900 homes. This year anyway, that's what it was. And then right now we're sitting around 775, 750 right in there. Right. Very normal for the time of year.
Everything's good to go.
Yep.
And the world is at peace.
And the world is at peace.
Thanks, Josh. I'll see you next month, man. I'll see you next year. I get to say that once a year and I blew it.
See you next year, buddy.
Bye.
If you're enjoying the All Things Real Estate podcast, please feel free to subscribe, rate, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. That helps others find the show, and we really appreciate it. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.